Good morning and welcome to the EDC Quarterly Breakfast broadcast live from the St. Augustine Chamber office here today. I'm Isabel Renom, the President and CEO of the St. Johns County Chamber of Commerce. And it's a pleasure to have you. We're so grateful to have you this morning with us, joining us from your homes or your office. And we're excited to be able to bring to you a really interesting and engaging discussion with our panelists this morning, Peter Schwartz and Matt Dixon, very shortly. So let's start right now. I want to invite you to join me. If you want to stand up where you are, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I would like to take a moment to really extend a special welcome to our elected officials that are attending with us today, specifically our newly elected County Commissioner, Christian Whitehurst. Welcome. We want to all thank you for what you do for our community on a regular basis, for all our county and city commissioners and elected officials. This is the third live EDC quarterly breakfast broadcast the Chamber has put together and produced since the start of the pandemic. And with each event, we really try to bring to you meaningful information, interesting speaker, and engaging opportunity, and also opportunity for you to connect like you just did this morning throughout the breakout room. Even if it's virtually, you want to make sure we have that connection going. At our traditional in-person EDC events of the past, we invited you to join us and to connect over coffee and breakfast. And we hope to invite you again to join us over scrambled eggs and coffee for 2021. We will continue to monitor the COVID situation and follow CDC and the health department guideline as we plan for our event for 2021. At this time, I would like to take a few moments to celebrate the successes and the effort of last year. We are so proud to receive phenomenal support from our volunteer leaders. We could not provide you, our members, the meaningful content and services that we're providing you without their help. So annually, the Chamber hosts an award ceremony at the beginning of the fiscal year during our branded event. And this year, due to COVID, we could not gather together. However, we are fortunate enough this morning to have in our Chamber studio a few members that we would like to celebrate and acknowledge. So this morning, we are pleased to announce 3 of all the awards that we will be given. And they are the Fred Schroeder Economic Development Member of the Year Award, the Chamber Chairman's Award, the Chamber Member of the Year Award. These awards will be presented by our immediate past chair of the Chamber, Mark Nickberg, with Advanced Disposal, a subsidiary of Waste Management. Before Mark joins me to the podium, I would like, on behalf of the staff and the board, to thank him for his strong leadership over the last year. Mark was the chair during the pandemic year, a first. I think nobody wants to claim that prize, Mark, so thank you. He was who's really helped our organization stay focused on our members' need and has helped us pivot our services online to serve you, our member, safely and without interruption. He's a consummate professional. He's very unwavering leadership strength has got us through this challenging year for our members and for the Chamber. So, Mark, I just want to say thank you, a heartfelt thank you from the board and from the staff for your service. And we're very grateful that you were our chairman and you're still sitting on the board with us as the immediate past chair of the Chamber. So thank you. Now, I would like to turn the podium to you so that you can recognize some of the leaders that have made a mark this year and has helped you during your chairmanship year. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Isabel. Hopefully I won't go down as the chair of the pandemic, just the chair of the pandemic effort, and hopefully this will be over soon. Good morning, members and guests. It's only fitting that the EDC Member of the Year is announced during the last EDC breakfast of the year. Mike Copenhaver, past chair of the Economic Development Council Executive Committee, will be presenting this award to Don Fox, CEO of Firehouse of America, LLC, better known to most of us as Firehouse Subs. Firehouse Subs is an international firm headquartered here in the region. While the company faced and continues to face the challenges of the pandemic, they've kept the welfare of their employees, customers, and the community in the forefront of every decision they've made. They've also supported other restaurants struggling to pivot their business, and also continued in their unwavering support of our heroes, our first responders, and essential workers during this pandemic. Mike will be presenting this award to Don at a mutual time decided between the two of them. Now I have the pleasure to present this year's Chairman's Award to St. Johns County's Deputy County Commissioner, Joy Andrews. Joy, if you would please join me at the extended podium. As Deputy County Commissioner, Joy oversees economic development among many other responsibilities. During my year as chair of the board, Joy collaborated with our leadership to ensure that our county remained and continues to remain resilient during these unprecedented times. She created and led the Economic Recovery Task Force, partnering with community leaders who launched the St. Johns County Pledge for Businesses. Her quick actions allowed the county to swiftly respond to business needs by launching several business assistance programs, including financial assistance that was provided by the St. Johns County CARES Recovery Program. Thank you, Joy, for all your efforts, your collaboration with the business community and the chamber, and joining us today. Thank you, Joy. The Chamber Member of the Year Award is presented to one of our major private employers in St. Johns County and an educational workforce developer, Northrop Grumman and First Coast Technical College. Orv and Arlene, if you would also join us at the extended podium. Northrop Grumman has been a business leader in our county for several decades and continues to be an engine for growth. The company's leadership reached out to the Chamber and First Coast Technical College to strategically plan for developing the talent necessary to fuel this growth. These collaborative efforts resulted in an educational training program that is preparing St. Johns County's talent for careers in manufacturing and the aerospace industry, while also growing the talents of qualified workers for other manufacturers in the region. Thank you both for your efforts and for joining us here this morning. Thank you. In addition to today's announcement, we'll be distributing a press release listing all of the 2020 award winners that Isabel had referenced, announcing the recipients on our social media platforms, and wherever possible and safely, personally delivering these awards. It is now my pleasure to introduce Christina Langston, Chief of Community Relations for the St. Johns County School District and Vice Chair of the Chamber's Economic Development Council Executive Committee.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, and thank you for sharing your Friday morning with us. While we have experienced unprecedented challenges this year, during the past quarter, we have observed great resiliency among our chamber members and throughout our county. We were prepared for signs of extreme economic distress, and we learned recently that the St. Johns County recorded the second lowest unemployment rate in the state. Additionally, several projects beyond the project phase. For example, Baptist Health Place and Nocatee YMCA opened last month. The Flagler Health Plus Village facility is opening in Nocatee this month. The Link building, also in Nocatee, broke ground in June and is now vertical. Our resiliency has shown in other areas as well. The United Way of St. Johns County recently stated that businesses and individuals have come together in extraordinary ways and collected 47,000 pounds of food for food pantries and distributed 157,000 meals. Our county is positioned well for 2021. We have come together to endure this global pandemic, and we look forward to a strong future. During a time of extreme uncertainty and adversity for small and large businesses alike, and joining the number of chamber members renewing and joining the chamber have exceeded our expectations. I would like to extend a warm welcome and a special thank you to those members who have joined at the Economic Development Council level and above. ARCO Design Build, Basket Life, C3 Church Jacks, DLP Real Estate Capital, Edward Jones, Pinnacle Communications Group, Seamark Ranch, Siemens, Van Trust Real Estate, Vitas Healthcare, and Wavefly. Thank you for joining the St. Johns County Chamber of Commerce and for your support of economic development in St. Johns County. I would like to acknowledge and thank the sponsors of today's EDC quarterly breakfast event. The support of our sponsors for this and other events provides the Chamber with the resources necessary for us to curate engaging and informative events and to produce these events both virtually and in person. With the high quality and customized approach you are accustomed to enjoying. Our growth sponsors are the Northeast Florida Regional Airport, Wired to Perform, and the SAPNA Foundation. Our Capital Series sponsors are Jackson Law Group, North Avenue Capital, Pure Clean Emergency Restoration Services. Thank you for your support. And last but not least, our principal sponsor is the St. Augustine and St. Johns County Board of Realtors. Now I would like to welcome Victor Ramos, the Executive Director of the St. Johns County and St. Augustine Board of Realtors, and today's principal sponsor, to introduce our speakers.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Before I introduce the keynote speakers, I would like to do an invocation, so please join me. Dear Lord, thank you for giving us this opportunity to spend time together with you, our friends and colleagues, to give recognition and praise to you. Please give us the strength to endure this virtual world that we find ourselves in with Zoom, GoToMeetings, and all other things virtual. Please help us to remember to reach out with a personal touch to the ones we love and others, to show that it takes more than virtual touches to make this a better and safer community. Give us the ability to carry out our responsibilities to our members and to always do things with your spirit as our guiding light. Give us the strength and vision to help others that are less fortunate, so that they may too enjoy the fruits of our joint labors. Please bless, protect, and guide the governor and the legislature to continue to lead with their examples and support to make Florida the best for the benefit of all Florida residents. Please give us the strength and wisdom to work together for the economic growth for the benefit of the citizens and businesses in St. Johns County. Please help us to be a unifying voice for our community in this time of challenge in the political world. Help us to make common sense common again. Please help and protect everyone from the COVID-19 epidemic uptick, and to help those that have lost loved ones to the pandemic. We give thanks to the governor and the legislature for their leadership, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. Please help and protect the men and women in the armed forces serving overseas, bringing them back safely to their families. We ask for these things in your name. Amen. A few words about the St. John's and St. Augustine Board of Realtors. The board was founded in 1941 and is headquartered in central St. Johns County near the intersection of the 312 Business Corridor and US 1. The members of our board are very important in our community. They are leaders in the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Council. They are leaders in other civic organizations and leaders in our place of worship. If you take the realtors out of the community, there would be a huge void. Now I'm pleased to introduce our moderator and speakers. We are joined together today by the Chamber's Public Policy Committee Chair, Beth Sweeney. Beth is the Director of Community and Government Relations at Flagler College. Prior to joining the staff at Flagler, Beth served as a Director for Policy and Government Relations at St. Johns County School District. We are fortunate to have Matt and Peter join us today to give St. Johns County Chamber members a first look into issues facing Governor DeSantis and the Florida legislature next year. Between COVID-19 recovery and the likely multi-million-dollar budget deficit, there will be many tough decisions to be faced that will affect the livelihood of St. Johns County businesses. We are excited to have Peter Scorch with us this morning via Zoom. Peter is the president of Extensive Enterprises Media and the publisher and executive editor of FloridaPolitics.com, Influence Magazine, and a suite of podcasts and email letters, including Sunburn, the morning read of what's hot in Florida politics. In addition to his publishing work, Peter is a political consultant to numerous elected officials, as well as some of the state's largest companies, governmental affairs, and public relation firms. We are also happy to have Matt Dixon join us via Zoom as well. Matt is Political's Florida Bureau Chief, a position he has held for more than 5 years. He has covered Florida politics and policy since moving to Tallahassee in 2010. Prior to that, he covered local government for the Villages Daily Sun and Panama City News Herald. He is a Wisconsin native and a graduate of Marquette University. Matt, you need to tell us about the nightlife at the Villages. Known for their ability to carry out a story, Scorch and Dixon are known for their political insight into what makes Florida's politicians tick and why. That statement does not compute, as both of you seem to be calm and reassuring. Thank you for joining us today to share your insights into the 2021 Florida political landscape. Now I would like to turn the microphone over to Beth, Peter, and Matt. Beth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victor, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin, I would like to take a few minutes to do some housekeeping. We ask that you remain on mute during this discussion to minimize background noise. And at this time, you can feel free to turn off your video if you prefer. We have received questions from our members in advance that we plan to ask Peter and Matt, but we will also take questions from the audience if time permits towards the end of our session. So please submit your questions through the chat box and share them with us as we move through our program. And now on to the discussion. So Peter and Matt, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know I'm personally very excited to be speaking with you. Thank you for sharing your insights. And we want to start off this morning by asking each of you a little bit about what you see on the horizon for 2021 in the political arena, with the legislature starting in March and committee meetings next month. So Peter, why don't you go ahead and start us off this morning?
You're on mute, Zoom guy.
Okay, there we go. Really close up. Thank you very much for having me speak this morning. St. Augustine is my other favorite town, other than St. Petersburg. You know, we can't get there enough. In fact, I'd love to tell the story. I can probably tell it at the end. My wife says she fell in love with me at the Casa Monica when she wanted to order room service, and I said, of course. And she knew right then that that I was never going to say no to her. So we always love it over there. We go into right now, and I think, there hasn't been a lot of momentum on the legislative side. It's been eerily quiet, and I think that is indicative of a session where we're not going to see a lot of movement on things. It just seems as if the two legislative leaders, Wilton Simpson and Chris Sproles, are hesitant about weighing in on some of the pandemic issues. And when you don't have these committee weeks lined up in December and early January, it forces it's basically addition by subtraction. And so you haven't seen a lot of bills get filed early. I'm sure Matt will be able to tell you a little bit more about some specific ones. I know he had a story today about imposing liability caps because of COVID. And then the governor also has this controversial anti-protest legislation. But other than that, there really isn't a lot going on because we're still weary about where the budget is at, although the last month's revenues seem to be better than expected. And so you're seeing members already kind of self-declare that they're not going to do member projects, et cetera. So I'm getting this feeling that, we're not going to have this really gangbuster session. But then when I say all of that, it always, if you look back through time, when people like me say stupid things like there's not a lot on the agenda for 2021, that's when you get, some big surprises. And like that could be, Wilton Simpson flirted this week again with signing a Seminole Compact. They also mentioned, Chris Sproles and him mentioned about implementing online sales tax, which they don't view as a tax. They just view that as collecting the tax that should have been collected all the way. But when there is a vacuum, sometimes the legislature abhors that and starts to fill it with bigger ideas.
Yeah, well, I think, Peter's right. There has been a lot of movement looking towards the Capitol. And I think that could ease up this month if you look towards Congress, actually. If Congress, the federal funding in the midst of this pandemic is going to be huge it has been huge so far to sort of keep Florida afloat throughout the first 9 months of the pandemic. But also looking forward, there's a roughly $3 billion budget gap that lawmakers are going to face going into Tallahassee. It moves a little bit, but right around $3 billion, which is a big number, but they've had bigger ones before. They can deal with it. So how Congress, one, sets aside, if they decide to set aside state aid, as part of any coronavirus package, if it passes, will be big. And then two, how they allow states and local governments to spend it will be big. There was a huge fight in the first round about what exactly the type of expenses that the state could spend that federal money on. It's going to go a large, Peter, I'm talking, mute. Come on, man. Geez. That without the ability to spend, I guess, on a broader array of things, state governments and local governments, as I'm sure many of you are aware, felt their hands were a little tied. So I think what Congress does, or if they act, there's a chance they don't do anything. There's a very good chance they don't do anything. The Senate has had some major concerns, but the flow of federal money to the state and how that looks is going to be hugely important for setting the stage for the legislative session. Figuring out, do they have more money to do things like housing, economic development? Those sort of things are going to have a tough session without question. This is not going to be a good revenue year. And Peter mentioned member projects, which I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with, the economic development projects that members bring back home, and they're very specific for local communities. If you have something that you want to do as a member project this year, you would be smart to figure out a way to try to tie it to COVID, even if it's not an organic fit, because those are probably the only things that lawmakers are going to listen to. Anything that the typical museum grants or local ballparks or things like that generally get hashed out, and there's hundreds of millions of dollars set aside for at the end of the budget process, that probably isn't going to exist this year. So that's something to be cognizant of is anyone's planning legislative strategies, because the budget and revenue shortfalls are going to dominate the day. They are going to do some sort of COVID liability package. I think we can get into some more details on that later. And then Peter had mentioned Governor DeSantis had proposed legislation to sort of, it was inspired by the protests and some violent, some mostly peaceful, some violent over the summer in the wake of the George Floyd killing. There hasn't been, that got a lot of big headlines and it is politically splashy, but it's important to note there isn't a bill in either chamber yet. I think the governor will probably find a sponsor, a sponsor at some point, but it's going to be a politically contentious bill that is going to get, a lot of protests, a lot of attention. So that's, a politically dicey situation that we don't know how it's exactly going to play out, but that's in the policy realm. And kind of the political realm. And I think most of the focus this year is going to be on dollars and cents or lack thereof, and figuring out what the state can spend money on and what it can't spend money on is pretty much going to be the lifeblood of the first 5 months of 2021, which is kind of when the session will play out.
Thank you both. I think those are some really great insights. Thank you for sharing them with us. I'm going to go ahead and move into some questions. What are the biggest surprises that you saw in the recent elections last month, both in state campaigns and federal campaigns? I think there was probably some chatter, I think, in every election recently about a blue wave happening in Florida. Talk to us about what you saw. Were there any surprises, and how do you think that will impact things in Tallahassee?
I guess a slight surprise for me is it's not that Florida Democrats continue to sort of not be good in Florida, because I've been here 12 years now and they've never really won races, but the height of their sort of incompetency or circular firing squad this year was quite something. To sort of put a finer point on it, President Trump won here by almost 4 points, which is a landslide by Florida measures. It was, the past few cycles had been 1 point sort of races. The Florida Democrats lost 6 seats in the Florida legislature, and they lost 2 congressional incumbents. They got wiped out across the board. So Democrats have always generally been beaten since I've been here, but they would always have one thing to hang their hat on. In 2018, they lost the Senate race and they lost the gubernatorial race, but Nikki Fried won agriculture commissioner. So they got someone on the cabinet for the first time in a long time. They could hang their hat on that. They could say, well, it was a tough cycle, but we're making progress. They could previously say that we're making gains in the state Senate. At one point, they were down to 12 seats. They were at, as close as 18 or 19. They lost a seat in the Senate. So this cycle, Florida Democrats have always been at a disadvantage because they have no power in Tallahassee. So it's hard to raise money. It's hard for the people with no power to ask for money. And so they've always been at a disadvantage here, but they've generally been able to eke out some sort of win, something to say, hey guys, it sucked, but it wasn't that bad. This cycle for Florida Democrats, it just sucked.
I think the big winner out of this election cycle was Kevin Sweeney. He was critical and key.
Shameless. You are shameless.
To almost every victory that took place. He reminds us again and again that field matters, that knocking on doors. And it's really a problem that Matt doesn't listen to him more because he's always right. And so I want to ask him. And so, Matt lined up with a lot of races. I think one of the big surprises, when you look, number one, we're all disappointed Travis Hudson's not going to be Senate president. But number two, I think you have to look at how well Florida Republicans did in the House, the state House. There was a lot of consternation going into this cycle that it would be maybe a Democratic +2 or 3, maybe more year that they were expecting to maybe eat into Chris Sprowls' majority. And it ended up being the opposite of that. The Republicans knocked off some progressive incumbents like Cindy Polo and Jennifer Webb. And then they basically swept all of the battleground seats, whether it be, Patrick Henry lost to Elizabeth Federoff, Jackie Toledo held off Julie Jenkins in Tampa, a whole set of races down in South Florida. None of those broke right for the Democrats. And so the fact that the House Republicans expanded their majority by a net of 5 seats, as big of a margin of victory that Trump won, as surprising as it was that Republicans won the 2 congressional seats in South Florida, if I was betting on any one of those scenarios to happen, I would have said the one scenario that I thought was the furthest out would be that the Republicans would build on their majority in the House. And as for the Senate, I think it's important to note just how incompetent the Democrats are there. And you have to look at that. I think you have to look at this, not just, I think you have to look at it as a 4-year sweep. If you go back to when they started planning under basically the incoming Democratic leader, Gary Farmer, they outlined 6 seats in 2018 that they were targeting. And then they added 2 seats this year, and then 2 more seats came into play. So that basically over the last 2 election cycles, there were 10 competitive state Senate seats. And they basically lost all of those, save 1. And so there was talk, right after redistricting. Remember, these are lines drawn basically for Democrats to win. They really are. After the redistricting revamp in 2015, 2016, these are lines favorable to Democrats. And the fact that they've lost in all of these battleground seats, it really is just a reminder of how center-right Florida is.
Well, they did. I mean, the one thing we've slightly disagreed on in the past, you're right, this was a bad cycle for them, but they went from 12 to 17. So net 5 for, if I were to say of the statewide, the House and the Senate for Democrats, the Senate caucus has been somewhat of a silver lining. And it also probably should be noted, we haven't brought this up, the Miami Herald and my favorite reporter, Ana Ceballos, who also happens to be my fiance, is reporting today that Frank Artilles, kind of one of Florida's great political boogeymen, was behind kind of an orchestrated effort to prop up a no party affiliated candidate in a very key Miami Senate race. You guys have probably read a little bit about it. And he got this NPA candidate, who was kind of a sham candidate, got 6,000 votes and ended up really probably winning that seat for Republicans. So nothing illegal has been identified yet, but it was definitely some really, in the Republicans' one pickup in the Senate this year, there was definitely a bit of dirty pool.
That was a great story by Anna. And I do urge everybody to read that one, because it just, I hate to say it this way, it goes to show, and I'm pretty progressive relative to other people in the media. It goes to show you how incompetent the Florida Democratic campaign operation is, that they're complaining after the fact about this third-party candidate, when this is something that has happened in a variety of different races for as many election cycles as I can remember. And so this is another case where the Democrats are complaining that the boxer that they're fighting is taller, faster, and hits harder. And so as we go into this next month, where the Democrats are trying to choose a new state party chair, and that's really not going to be it won't be the solution to their problems, no matter who it is. They have hit rock bottom, and they need to figure out a new way of campaigning in Florida.
It should be noted, you're right, these NPA shenanigans always do happen, and I don't believe Democrats have ever really put forward an idea to make it illegal. I think this is something to a degree that happens on both sides, and it's an option Democrats want to keep open, and Republicans just happen to get caught this cycle. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Okay, thank you. So I think we know that the Republicans firmly control both the House and the Senate heading into session. And I'll echo Peter's comments. We learned this cycle how much field really matters. And so what does that mean for the policies that are going to be pushed in Tallahassee? And tied to that, we know some committee assignments have recently come out in the Senate. We know some of the leadership in the House has been released. What do those mean for us moving forward? What can we expect policies to come out of, given the leadership of the various committees and the makeup of them?
I think everybody should read Matt Dixon at mdixon55, his thread yesterday Wednesday, I think, on the committee assignments. And it's always fun because Matt and I, we compete to try. Well, I think we compete. Matt probably doesn't view me that way, but we try to compete about who's going to be first on all these things.
You can sit at the table, Peter.
Analysis about who is going to be where and who's going to be great. So let's rat-a-tat-tat on that, Matt. I don't steal all of your answers, because I'd like to steal some of your answers from your Twitter account.
I'm sure you got something going.
Number one, Field Matters, and then I'll throw out one big winner, and I think that that's Jason Pizzo. He's a Democrat, maybe is going to be, he was named by Wilton Simpson to be chair of criminal justice. With the governor's anti-protest legislation getting such high profile, it's going to be interesting to see that. I think it's significant that a Democrat in, a post George Floyd kind of defund the police era is got that bill. It'll be interesting to watch, Pizzo's committee kind of go the opposite of what's coming out of Chris Sproles' house. Chris Sproles is the son of a detective, very strong law enforcement credentials, wants to be state attorney down here in Pinellas, Pasco County. So that's going to be that's probably why Pizzo maybe got that assignment. So I think he was one of the big winners. So that's my first one.
Yeah, and I would say, especially from a business group here, the Senate is, I think, and President Wilton Simpson is signaling they're emboldened and they should be. Dirty Pool side of the campaign trail, they picked up a seat, and I think they're signaling that they're going to be a very sort of business friendly, pro insurance industry, chamber. And the thing that I would point to specifically is the Banking and Insurance Committee. Jim Boyd, who's an insurance agent, seen as very friendly towards the industry and folks who are part of this organization, is chair of that committee. Is 2 terms ago, there was there's been sort of an evolution of the Senate's top business or insurance committee. There was a senator from South Florida named Anna Terry Flores that the industry really quarreled with, and that committee was actually seen as sort of a roadblock for insurance bills and a lot of business friendly bills. That has changed a lot, and that's a sort of going to be a Wilton Simpson calling card. And just in general, we're going into a big liability session. We're going into a session that's going to deal a lot with sort of tort reform issues. And I think he has set up his budget chair is a senator named Kelly Stargell. His rules chair is future Senate President Kathleen Passidomo. And those are all members who are very strong and sort of noted pro-business and not necessarily on the side of the trial bar, which has generally been the counterweight to those interests. So I think the Senate,
So when I said don't name like each one of the winners, like that we were going to go back and forth, you decided to monopolize it anyways. Like that's what
this is not our first Zoom session. You know how this works.
I mean, you're just like, so like, I was like, hey, I mean, I could have just jumped in and said all of my winners and then left you with like, oh, well, David Roussan's got agriculture.
I don't classify them as winners. I'm just outlining the contours of the chamber, Peter. Different framing. Long story short, and I'll kick it back to Peter. The Senate, I think if you're reading tea leaves, is signaling they are going to be very, very pro-business, very pro-insurance industry, and that's important going into a session with liability. Now, back to you, Peter.
Hold on, I've got a call. I'm sorry. I think one of the winners is Danny Burgess, and I think you highlighted this the other in your Twitter feed, Matt. You pointed out that almost all of the like new members that got elected got a nice little plum reward for being elected.
That's right.
Jason Broder. Who else? Ileana Garcia did not get a chair, but she's vice chair of rules.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. But Danny Burgess got the chair of the committee that's going to look at a response to the pandemic. And so that's kind of a grab bag. That could be big or it could be small. Right now, it's going to be small, or it looks like it's going to be small because they haven't done anything. But if we, maybe this deals with vaccination regulations. Maybe it deals with how we, the legislature has basically abdicated its authority over how to spend money to the governor under all these emergency powers. It'll be interesting maybe if they get back into that. I do think just a couple of notes that I had on my Twitter feed, which is @PeterSchorsch_FL. I'm not verified on Twitter, which is very upsetting to me. But now that Twitter is bringing back the blue check marks, maybe I will be verified in 2021. I'm not bitter about that.
If you wear enough blue polos.
Even though I have more followers than Matt, and I'm much wittier on Twitter, and I post really cool like videos and stuff where Matt just posts about Green Bay Packers.
Peter, I can't hear you from my blue checkmark club.
So he knows how bitter I am about this.
I do. It's great.
Field Matters. I think a couple of interesting notes. Neither the minority leader or the majority leader got a chairmanship. That's a little bit of a break from years past. So they're going to be, usually majority leader has a bigger role. Another kind of like, I don't want to say sin of omission, but something that didn't happen was Kathleen Pasadomo didn't get the reapportionment committee. Usually the next speaker or next president in line is named the reapportionment committee chair. And that's happened the last couple of decades. I'm told that's not going to happen probably going forward, that there's other plans there. And so that's kind of an interesting double negative that occurred. And then the third one was, Gary Farmer again. Gary's just really not in a great place. Usually the Democrat leader is named vice chair of the Rules Committee. And this is very technical stuff, but he was not made vice chair of the Rules Committee. So a person with even less power than he had going into it was marginalized even further.
Well, and that was a bit of a snub. It is in the weeds, but that position is not unimportant. The Rules Committee is an important committee. And the vice chair is going to be Eliana Garcia, the winner of the sort of the dirty pool state Senate race that Gary Farmer lost. So, I mean, if you were a cynic and, you think in politics, nothing is an accident, that can be seen as sort of a snub to the incoming or the now Senate Minority Leader. I also think it would be if you were to rank committees as far as importance, budget and rules are kind of at the top. President Simpson gave women both those gavels. Kathleen Pasadomo rules and Kelly Stargell budget. I can't think. I would have to really deep dive it, but it's certainly been a long time since that's both been the case. So I think that's certainly interesting and worth pointing out that the way he structured his chamber that way, because those committees both have, they don't, totally run the show, but they got a lot of juice.
All right, I'm going to jump in here. We're quickly running out of time here. So we have about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to try to move us quickly through a couple of last questions. Peter, I think you mentioned that Danny Burgess will be the chair of the Pandemic Response Committee. What do you both see the legislature doing on COVID liability protections for businesses? Do you think that's going to gain traction this session? How far do you think those protections will go if they do pass something?
I think the Senate is moving quickly. We got a copy of a draft bill that they're preparing to file, and they're doing things. They're going to be much more aggressive. What the Senate is teeing up would give sort of blanket immunity to healthcare facilities, including nursing homes. It would make the legal threshold gross negligence, which is very high for proving liability in a COVID-related suit. Those are all things that probably aren't going to pass as is, but that's going to be the Senate starting point. Now, the dynamics between the House and the Senate here are going to be kind of interesting. The House isn't moving quite as fast. Speaker Sprowls has just talked about how he's still gathering input from his members. They don't have a draft bill or a real philosophy yet. And what I think is sort of going to be notable there is the Florida Justice Association of the trial lawyers really helped Chris Sprowls get over the finish line to become speaker. So I don't remotely mean to imply that he's anti-business, but he has, sort of a connection to the community that is going to really fight heavily against what the Senate is doing. So figuring out exactly where the House and the Senate meet in the middle is going to be kind of the fascinating thing to watch. I think without question, something passes, but I think opponents of liability caps and the direction that the Senate wants to go are really going to try to run the two bills together, try to crash them in the middle when you're outgunned in the Florida legislature like they are, when you're, sort of don't have the votes you'd like or don't have the members that you'd like. The goal is to try to take a House bill and a Senate bill that aren't the same and keep them different. And I think we're going to see an effort on that front this year. So a deal is going to be reached, something's going to be passed, the governor's going to sign something they have to, there's too much pressure not to, but ultimately what that looks like is going to be really interesting. And the dynamic starting out as early as next month is Senate is going to be very, very, very sort of pro-business, pro-insure, and we don't know where the House is going to be. We don't exactly know what their initial bill is going to look like, and that's kind of going to be the starting gun when the House signals where they're going.
Yeah, all that technical legislative stuff, like that's not in my bag. I don't do that. That's what Matt's for. I would tell you to go look at whatever he's got, but it's behind a paywall. So we'll just probably re-report it in a couple hours and out there. And I mean, you basically, no.
That's why I'm a blue check mark and you're not, Peter.
I think about with the trial lawyers. And, when they had Kevin Sweeney, they were amazing. And I wonder if the so-called Sweeney effect is going to be in play for this session now that they don't have him. They have been really good, given that there's only basically a handful of them versus all of the lobbyists for the chamber, associated industries, et cetera, of warding off some of the legislation that could impact that industry. That being said, there is a change. There are, elections have consequences, and even though some people have Republican by their name, when you, like Matt alluded to earlier, going from Ana Terra Flores to Ana Maria Rodriguez, they're the same party, but that's not the same vote. And so, and Matt, I do think because you always identify these trains and things like that, I just get this feeling that COVID liability is one of those things that is in danger of, it could be loaded up with so much stuff by the time you get to session, and liability for everybody. People are going to see that bill, and they're going to see, yeah, we definitely should try to provide some liability protection to hospitals and so forth. And then you're going to see every industry group start to try and jump in there. Well, I'm a plumbing company, and we fixed people's, and you're just going to see all these amendments and late files and write-throughs. And I just wonder if at the end, a liability protection becomes a victim of its own success.
That bill is going to encompass a lot of different Florida statutes. A lot of different laws are going to be included in that bill. Anytime a law is in a bill that opens it up for any other issue or element that is in that statute, you can put it on that bill, and they become, what are kind of called bill trains at the end of session. So any little sort of even vague insurance or liability related issue, Peter's right. I bet there's going to be attempts at the end of the session to load it up, and it's going to be up to the sponsors to sort of fend those things off. And I do ultimately think there's too much pressure not to pass something, but I just, at this point, it's anyone's guess on what the final product will look like. It's going to be a long 5 months on that front.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch gears a little bit. Peter, you mentioned elections have consequences. And so I know I was a little surprised. I'm sure many of our viewers were a little surprised to see Amendment 2, the minimum wage amendment, pass in a state that went so heavily for President Trump. To see that minimum wage amendment pass with the required 60% was a little surprising. And I know that could have some big implications for our tourism industry in St. Johns County. So can you talk to us, do you think that the legislature is going to do anything to implement that amendment this session, or are they going to put that off a little ways, or do you see anything happening this year on that?
What I would
Go ahead. Well, she asked me. I mean, she said Peter.
I'm a very busy guy.
So I think there's going to be an implementing bill where it says, we are raising the minimum wage to $15. We'll agree to that, but we're just going to subtract $7. And I just can't wait to see what the Republican legislature does to gut it. And I will say, they better be careful. If you talk to like Rob Bradley, the state senator outgoing from Clay County, who's appropriation chair, his wife is now in the Senate, Jennifer Bradley. He said he was at all these forums, and and he kind of represents a lot of those hard scrabble counties that voted for Trump at a very high proportion, but also voted for this amendment too. And it is about the economic populism that Make America Great Donald Trump represents. And so, yes, it was surprising to us, but it probably shouldn't have been. It probably shouldn't have been surprising that, down class, white working class voters who are upset with elites on all these other issues, who are only making $11 an hour in Union County, are willing to vote for a raise for themselves. And so, yes, I do think that there will be an attempt, probably out of the House, to manipulate the amendment or to implement it in a way that kind of, puts it off, delays it, makes it go through another vote or something like that, because there's really no penalty to them for doing it. They've done this on high-speed rail. They've done this on marijuana, and they've never been punished at the ballot box for, and Amendment 4, of course. And they've never been punished at the ballot box for these kind of implementing bills. So I think it's just in the legislature's DNA to mess with them. So I do think that there will be some sort of attempt to undermine Amendment 2.
We're short on time, so I'll just say agreed. I agree with all that.
All right.
Yeah, I do. I think that's right.
All right, great. On the record, Matt just told Peter he thinks he's right. So,
And I'm
one
done for
last
the day.
question.
That's it. That's my last panel. I'm good.
Only because we were short on time.
One last question I'll ask about that I know is important to our community. The need for housing funds, for SHIP funds are critical to our community. High growth area where people are moving here and wanting more affordable housing options. We know historically in tight budget years, the Sadowski Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the legislature sweeps those funds to fill other areas of the budget. Do you think that's gonna happen again this year?
I think there's probably a high likelihood just because of where the budget gap is. Nobody wants to cut it until they do. And the best example is the Hurricane Michael year. That was the first year. The House has always been more aggressive at cutting than the Senate. It's sort of been a budget negotiation thing. Hurricane Michael, I think it was 2018. It was the first year where the House put forward a budget where they didn't cut it. House and the Senate seem to be on the same page. No cuts to the Housing Trust Fund. Hurricane Michael swipes through. The legislature needs money. It ends up getting cut. And I think COVID is, obviously a Hurricane Michael plus. So we won't know until they start to really formulate their budgets. But if past is precedent, I think there's a high degree of likelihood that money will be used to fill, other areas of the budget.
In the essence of time, I agree with Matt.
Oh my gosh, the holiday spirit amongst us.
I'm just glad you pronounced Sadowski, because I never know how to pronounce it. And I think one of the things that we should all do, like somebody should just explain where that word comes from. Like we just all say it, and we just all say, "Oh, they're going to sweep Sadowski," and like
I think it's actually Polish for housing.
I'm Polish. I should know that.
Yeah, no. You should know the terms I make up for the language. That's.
All right. Well, I think that's about all the time we have today. I can't thank
I have a lot
both
of
of you
closing
enough.
remarks, though. I have many closing remarks. No? Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna let each of you have 1 minute for some closing remarks.
No,
I just want to
I was
thank
just
you
kidding.
for being here. So I'll let Peter start us off with closing remarks.
Oh wow, I'm really close to the camera there. I didn't have any closing remarks. I was just joking.
Okay.
Where am I at on stuff right now? I think it's going to be, or what should we be watching right now? I think you're going to see some. I think you're going to see some changes in Governor DeSantis's office very soon, maybe over the holidays. I think you're going to see a couple of people head to DC. I think you're going to see some changes in messaging and communications over there. The governor is still stuck at like 45% approval rating. I don't think he's happy. I don't think his wife, Casey DeSantis, is very involved. I don't think she's happy. So I'll just throw that out there and say, look for a holiday shakeup on the plaza level.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And also I would just, when it comes fundraising time again and your cell phone starts to vibrate and it's Travis Hudson calling for call time, calling for contributions, I would remember that snub today. I'm just going to leave with that parting gift for Senator Hudson.
No snub. We love Senator Hudson here.
I'm kidding. We get along very well. I said that in jest.
Well, I thank you both for being here today. It was a really great conversation. Thank you for all of the insight and insider baseball you spoke with us about today. And thank you again. And I'm going to close this out for this conversation and turn it over to Isabel.
Wow, what an engaging and fun conversation we had this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to say a big thank you to Peter and Matt for making this happen. Beth, thank you so much for orchestrating this and making it so lively. We appreciate you. Thank you for our virtual audience this morning for spending your Friday morning with us. We will have this event put up and uploaded on your Chamber Information Center, on the website, on your personal profile. Should you want to access it, it will be up next week. Also, please follow us on social media and share all the awards that we'll be posting every day next week to thank and recognize our chamber leaders. Mark your calendar for the next EDC quarterly breakfast on February the 5th, 2021. More information to come and will be circulated after the holidays. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend and a great holiday season. Thank you all.